everyone, I hope everybody is doing fine, and we are back with the IELTS online series, and today we are at the day 7 of the writing academic task 1. And in today's class we'll be talking about the remaining 3 question type, which are a multiple figure question, um, based on the statistical questions that we have discussed, and the remaining 2 major question types, which are a diagram based question and a map based question. So we will be talking about these 2 question types in today's class. So let us quickly begin. So let us look at a sample question for a multiple figure based question, where you can see that there are 2 figures. One of them is a line graph and one of them is a bar graph, right? It's not necessary that you will just get a single single statistical figure based question. You can either get a single statistical figure based question or a double, like in this case, right? Now let us see how should we solve this question. The approach is same. So the first thing that we are again going to do is read the question, understand the question, and then make notes, right? Note about the major highlights and key components of this question and start writing our essay. Now in this case, the only difference would be when compared to a single statistical based figure would be the fact that you have to mention about both the figures in your introduction part, and you have to ensure that in the 150 word that you're writing, you have to talk about both the figures, right? And you have to give complete information. So now let us start making notes for this question. So the first thing that we are going to do is read the heading of the question, which is the question talks about visits or travel. So while rephrasing, travel to UK and from UK, right? So this is what the question is about. Now let us first look at the line graph question. So here we can see that the number of people, the number of UK residents who went abroad has increased, while the number of abroad people, or let's say overseas people, who came to UK has also increased, right? So both of this data has increased. The only difference is that there is a very significant change in this case, whereas there is a gradual change in this case, right? Now, as I have already mentioned while doing the line graph, whenever there is a line graph, please make sure that you are generating your insight on the basis of the first and the last points of the line graph that has been given. So in this case, since this blank line denotes the number of people, number of UK residents who went outside, so this number has significantly increased, whereas the number of people who actually visited to UK from other countries have gradually increased, right? So that is one insight that we can draw. Now obviously you can also talk about greater and lesser, because there are only two data. We know that throughout the time period, people who went from UK to abroad is higher than tourist coming to UK, right? So this number is higher than this throughout the time period, which is of 20 years, right? So the time period is from 1979 to 1999. The major key components in this figure are really these two parts, right? So these are the two major components along with the time period. Now if we have to talk about the bar graph, we can see that there is a relationship between these two figures. So 1999 मा जतिजना मान्छेहरू चाहिँ बाहिर गएको थिए, युकेबाट चाहिँ बाहिर गएको मान्छेहरू चाहिँ कता कहाँ गएको रहेछ भन्ने इन्फर्मेसन चाहिँ बार ग्राफले मेन्सन गरेको छ, राइट? सो whenever there is a double figure, you should try to see what is the relationship between the two figures, right? In this case, we can see that in the year 1999, of the 54 million people who went abroad, most people went to France, whereas the least people went to Turkey, right? So this is a basic insight that we can generate from these two figures. Now, since we are done with note making, let us quickly go to the introduction part, and let us see what are the components that you must include in the introduction. Here, the line graph shows the number of people who visited from UK to abroad and who visited from overseas to the UK in a period of 20 years starting from 1979 to 1999. So we have rephrased the major components. Along with that, we have also mentioned the time period which has been given in the question. So we mentioned all the key components in our introduction, and we are making sure that we are presenting the introduction of both the figures in our question, and I'm using the connector while to present the introduction for both the figures, while the bar graph further elaborates about the number of visits abroad to different locations in the year 1999, right? So make sure that whenever the question is a double figure based question, you have to include the introduction for both the question. You can use a connector such as while or whereas or a simply and to give the introduction for both the figures. Looking at the overview for this question, we just took note of few major highlights of the question. So the first thing that we saw was that both the numbers have increased. So overall, the number of visitors to and from UK increased over the period of 20 years. A significant increase is witnessed in visits overseas by UK residents, while there is a gradual rise in the number of people visiting to the UK. So this was something that we took a note of. Talking about the bar graph, don't just mention the highlights from the first figure, but make sure that you are mentioning the highlights from both the figures. So to do that, of the 5 countries visited by UK residents in the year 1999, France saw the most number of tourists. So we are just mentioning the country which has the highest number of UK resident arrival. Now, as we move on with the essay, we know that we do not mention data points in the overview. So we are going to justify our overview by presenting the data points in our body paragraph. And we are going to start with the topic statement, right? So topic statement, as I have mentioned over and over, it's a summary of your entire paragraph. And in this case, both visits to UK and abroad increased over the time period. So I'm going to justify this statement by presenting the data that how the number of people who visited to UK and from UK have increased over time. So initially in the year 1979, only around 10 million of UK residents visited abroad, while a little more than 10 million of foreigners entered the UK. Now you can see that I'm using different kind of synonyms to not repeat the same words over and over. Despite having similar data for the year 1979, by the end of the period in 1999, around 54 million UK residents traveled overseas, but only approximately 25 million tourists came to the UK. Now, as you can see that I have taken only the first point and the last point to show the entire trend of how the data has changed. I also mentioned that there was a significant growth in the number of people who visited from UK outside, and I do demonstrate that by saying that 54 million, and while this number grew from 10 million to 54 million, the other number grew only to 25 million, right? So that shows that there is a significant and a gradual increase. So you should be able to explain whatever you are mentioning in your overview by presenting the data points. Likewise, to talk about the body paragraph 2, in the year 1999, of the 54 million UK residents who traveled abroad, a little more than 10 million people visited France, followed by around 9 million of British visiting Spain. Other countries such as USA, Greece, and Turkey witnessed less than 5 million people from the Great Britain each, right? So now in the second paragraph, I'm talking about the bar graph. So it was very easy for me to divide my paragraph in this case because the relation between both of these figures were pretty much clear and started at the end of the first figure. However, there can be instances where you will not get a very clear distinction, and you should be able to group information and then divide your body paragraphs. So we generally group information on the basis of similar trends that is being followed and try to figure out a connection between the two figures that has been given in the question. Moving on to the next question type, which is a diagram based question. Here is a sample for a diagram based question where it's not statistical, but rather you have a figure and you're required to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, in this case as well, the first thing that we are going to do is try to read the question and understand what is happening in the figure, along with find any comparison points between these two figures that have been given here. So let us read the question first. The diagrams below show the stages and equipment used in the cement making process and how cement is used to produce concrete for building purposes. So in the first figure, it shows the production of cement, while in the second, the question talks about shows a diagram of concrete production. Now, is there any way, we can try to figure out what is happening in both the questions? So here we can see that there are two raw materials, which are limestone and clay, which pass through various steps, right? So the first one is crushing, then mixing, then heating, then grinding, right? So it mostly goes through, and then packaging. So it mostly goes through 5 stages, and after which cement is produced, which is then, so there is again a connection between both of these figures, which is then used for production of concrete along with a combination of other four raw materials, right? Now this is one way to look at the figure. Another way is we can also try to find a comparison, saying that there are multiple multiple stages in production of cement, whereas only lesser steps for concrete production, right? So this is one way of comparing. Another point that you can see is uses of, more number of equipments have been used for production of cement, whereas there is only one equipment for production of concrete, right? Now this is how you can look for a comparison between both the figures that have been shown in the question. Apart from that, we can also mention that there are 5 stages, whereas only one step in concrete production, right? So this can be another comparison between both the figures. So after you are done understanding the question, it's not as complicated as a statistical diagram. It's pretty much straightforward. It's not data based. So we'll quickly start writing our introduction and overview for this question. Again, in introduction part, in the introduction part, there's no such thing as key components here. So we are just going to quickly rephrase or paraphrase the question that has been given, right? And that is all about writing the introduction in this question. The given diagram show the procedure. So instead of using the word stages, I have instead of using the word process, I have used the word procedure to make cement, and the uses of cement in production of concrete, pretty much simple and straightforward. Then we are going to talk about the overview. Again, overview is basically a summary of the entire diagram. So you should try to be very precise and present your overview as an opening statement of your essay. So overall, limestone and clay go through 5 stages to produce cement, which is then used along with other raw materials in specific proportions to create concrete. Moreover, cement production requires many equipments, whereas only one machine is required to generate concrete. Now we are going to further elaborate this overview in our body paragraph. So let us quickly look at the body paragraphs as well. First of all, to produce cement, two raw materials, which are limestone and clay, are crushed, forming a powder. This powder then is mixed and passes through a rotating heater, followed by which the resulting mixture is heated and ground to produce cement. The cement is then packed into bags ready for building purposes. So in body paragraph 1, I'm just talking about the first figure. Now, since there is a connection between the first figure and the second figure, I'm going to start from that connection. The packed cement is then used to produce concrete, a mixture which comprises of 50% of cement, 10% of water, 25% of sand, and 50% gravel, comma formed of small stones, is put into a concrete mixture. The mixture is then rotated to finally produce concrete. Now this is all that has been shown in the figure, and you should not give your own opinions or subjective opinions in case of writing academic task 1. Now let us look at the final question type for academic writing task 1, and which is maps. So whenever you are looking at a map question, this is a sample for a map question, right? So whenever you are looking at a map question, generally you will be given a present or a past context of a certain architecture or a map of a certain area, or it may be a comparison between present and future as well, just like in this case. Now let us take notes for the map based question, and you should be able to categorize the information given in the map in these 4 categories, right? So whenever you are trying to compare between a certain thing into time periods, see what has changed over time, right? So first category for noticing the change is components that have, remained same over time. So पहिला पनि थियो र अहिले पनि छ हैन. अर्को भनेको चाहिँ by something that has changed by a little, पहिला थियो तर अहिले चाहिँ रिलोकेट भएको छ अथवा अहिले अलिकति एक्सटेन्ड भएको छ अर एक्सपान्ड भएको छ हैन. सो त्यो कन्टेक्स्ट हेर्न पायो. Third one is components that have completely been removed, right? So what are the components that have been removed? पहिला थियो तर अहिले छैन. And what are the components that have been newly added? So these are the four components on the basis of which you should be able to make comparisons between the map that has been given in different time, in different points of time, right? Now in this case, we have maps of an airport, which is Southwest Airport, right? And we have the current outlay, which is now, and we also have the outlay for something that is to be done in the future. Yes. So depending on these categories, let us try to make notes and make comparisons as well. So first of all, let us see what are the components that have remained same over time. Now, in this case, as we can see, the entire area of the, of the airport has changed, right? So the structure of the airport, or the entire area, the area of the airport has expanded. So this is something that has actually changed by a little, right? So the entire area. Now, if we can see the check-in and the cafe, which was there before, it's still there, the check-in and cafe, but again, these are also things that have changed by a little because they have been, relocated. So cafe has been relocated and also has been doubled in number, yes. While check-in has also been relocated. So these are the things that have actually changed by a little. Apart from that, the departures, the gates for departure, and the gates have also been doubled. Previously there were only one gates, while in the current scenario there are two gates for departure and arrival. So the only thing that has actually remained same are the major sections, right, which is the security and passport control office. So these are the only thing that has remained same over time. Apart from that, almost everything has changed. Now let us see things that have been completely removed. So the only thing that has been completely removed is the walkaway. Yes, so the walkaway has been completely removed. Apart from that, changed by a little are, previously there were 8 gates, so this 8 gates have changed to around 18 gates. So the number of gates have also been increased. So when we talk about the components that have been newly added, there are tons. An ATM has been added, right? A car hire has been added. A backdrop has also been added, and Skytrain has also been added, right? So these are the few things that have been added, that will be added after the redevelopment, right? So you have to make sure of the tense that you are using as well. So now, while we try to focus on these four categories, we have almost, covered on everything, on every major component of the figure that has been given. So now let us see how to write the introduction and the entire essay for this question. Now again, the introduction is pretty much straightforward. You just have to rephrase the question that has been given. So the given diagram show the existing outlay of an airport and its planned restructured outlay along with development of additional facilities to be done next year. So here we do not have the question, but it's basically a rephrasing of the question for this figure. Writing the overview, again, while writing the overview, try to mention how the circumstances have changed over time and try to summarize it. So in this case, overall, most of the existing services at the airport will be relocated inside the airport area, while few new services will be added. Furthermore, the area of the airport building shall remain the same, while the area outside the main building shall be expanded, right? So these are the few major highlights and a complete summary of what's going to happen in a period of 1 year after development of the airport. Talking about body, paragraph 1 mention the components of box number 1 and box number 2 in the first paragraph and mention the components of box number 3 and 4 in the second paragraph, and that is what I have done here. So in paragraph 1, I'm going to talk about components that have not changed at all and components that have changed by a little. So the airport hosts two major sections, which are this and this, which shall remain at the same location after development, so something that will not change. Similarly, people can come and go from the same gates that they do now for arrival and departure respectively. However, the single gates for each shall be doubled, so something that has changed by a little. Few existing services such as a cafe and a check-in shall remain after the redevelopment and be repositioned. The check-in is currently located beside the security passport control left side. However, it will be shifted to the right side in the same area, replacing the existing cafe. The cafe will be moved to one corner of the airport building and another cafe will be added on the opposite corner. Now, this is the elaboration that I have given, but again, depending on the word count, you can choose to not elaborate that and just mention how things have changed over time, right? um, Moving on to the second paragraph. Now in this paragraph we are going to talk about things that have been newly added and things that have been completely removed, right? Moreover, various new facilities shall be constructed in the airport. A car hire facility is to be set up in the customs section near the gates, while an ATM is also to be constructed in between the car hire and the cafe. A new bagging service and shops are going to be built on each side of the secretary office. The major addition will be gates increasing from 8 to 18, and the area outside the building shall host a train line removing the walkway, right? Now, these are the components that we had noted in these two categories, and hence we have mentioned all of those in our second paragraph as well, showing how are things going to be changed in a period of 1 year. Now, that was all about writing an essay for the map question. Whenever you are looking at a map question, please try to make sure that you are explaining all the changes that are happening over time or something that remains constant over time as well. If you are able to do that, you are able to compare the changes and you should be good to score a better score, right? Now, this was all about the question types for writing task 1, but obviously there are a lot of other things that you need to pay attention, especially from the task assessment criteria, where we talk about grammatical range and accuracy, we talk about cohesive devices and coherence. Along with that, we also talk about lexical resources. So these are few things that you should incorporate in your writing while also ensuring that you are answering the question that has been given, that has been asked. Now, this was all about writing task 1. In the next class, we'll be starting with writing task 2, where we'll talk about 5 major question types. And I'll see you guys in next class. Thank you.